Hello, hello. This is Jordan, your host.
And I'm Insha, the co-host. And today I'm super pumped because we're joined by two wonderful guests, Sofia and Crystal. And they both are two teen activists from an organization called H Mind, which is basically a youth-led mental health organization that takes a different toll on mental health and kind of works about changing the mindset involving mental health and through various ways like advocacy and activism and just empowering the youth, And both of them use she and her pronouns. So you guys want to go ahead and introduce yourself? You can, definitely go for it.
Yeah, for sure. So hi everyone. Thank you so much, Jordan and Insha, for having us here. My name is Crystal Wadado and I use she, her pronouns like what Insha just said. And I am currently the writing director of Each Mind, and I also do a lot of social media stuff, which is why I get to hang out with the awesome Sofia Isabella a lot. Aside from Each Mind, though, I do a lot of mental health activism work within journalism and also within my school's mental health club, and I'm really big on just general political advocacy and public speaking as well. Specifically with mental health, though, I'm really pumped about this podcast because I am a really big advocate for approaching mental health in a really intersectional and inclusive way. I think it's so beautiful that mental health is literally connected to every part of our lives, and I find that it's so important that we connect it to more part of our lives and more part of our political decisions that we make in our world. So yeah, I'm really glad to be here. I'm so excited to connect all of that and all of my passion to how we can talk about mental health stigma and teens and all of the great stuff that Each Mind does. So yeah, that's me.
Hi everyone, thank you all for having me. I don't know how I'm going to follow up Crystal. It's always kind of hard. Believe me, I've had to follow her up in debates. That's kind of difficult. But like we said, my name is Sofia Isabella. I am currently a more of a social media person for Each Mind. I help with Instagram Reels, TikToks, that sort of thing. I've done a few takeovers, which are really fun. But in my personal life, I advocate for mental health awareness and for just general mental health advocacy because I myself have struggled with mental health and illnesses for quite a long time now, and it really still astonishes me just how many people have preconceived notions and stigmas towards anyone struggling with mental health, not even necessarily an illness, but just people struggling with their mental health. And I don't know, ever since 7th grade, it's always just kind of been a burning passion, if you will, to want to help those people and to break down the stigma that other people still have against it. So that's my biggest goal. I do that through blogs. I have a few things on my Instagram, just like Instagram Reels, and I do those really lengthy, long posts on Instagram pictures. So your average little blogger, but about something that's really important to everyone and all ages of really everyone deals with it at some point, whether they admit it or not. So
that's awesome. Those are such great intros. You guys are so inspiring. I could never. Great and thoughtful intros.
After that amazing introduction of the two guests here, we will be discussing a little bit more about their organization and a little bit more of their roles and why Each Mind is super amazing in general, and then we'll be talking about the intersectionality within mental health and why that is so very important, and lastly we'll be talking about the sacrifices of prioritizing mental health because nobody really talks about that a lot. It's more about the pro of prioritizing your mental health, so we're gonna dive a little bit into that, and I'm super excited.
And this is Forever Blooming.
Awesome. So I do want to say that disclaimer, all of our research used in this episode is just United States statistics, so keep that in mind. It may be different with your location, and as I just said, we're going to be talking a little bit about Each Mind. So the first question I want to pose to you guys, what is Each Mind all about, and what role do you both play in making everything work?
Yeah, so I can answer this first. Each Mind is, like what Insha said, a youth-started mental health organization. We started around this time last year. So we've been around for almost a year now, that if you're listening to this podcast around the summer of like 2021. And we've mainly been using our magazine, like our quarterly magazine, and also our blog posts and our social media to really just advocate for more mental health awareness, defeating mental health stigma, and just generally having more conversations about mental health. I find that like just talking about mental health is really important, and we're now trying to focus on, like more recently, we're trying to focus on like how we talk about mental health and changing the way we talk about mental health to be more inclusive and to be more like acceptive, and just overall be more like progressive with our mental health commentary and our mental health discussions. So that's like mainly what we do with our magazine and our blog and our social media posts. But we just really love teen mental health and want to do everything to really connect with teens and find like more intersectional approaches to that. So as a writing director, I mainly organize our group of writers for the magazine articles, which are longer articles, and also the blog articles, which are shorter posts. And I'll let Sofia kind of talk about what we do with social media.
Yeah, so obviously because we are youth-led, we're very well versed in social media and virtual platforms. Like the quarterly magazine is all online. It's not like the Vogue issue you get in the mail. It's a little bit more personal. It's in your inbox waiting for you. It's on the newsletter or online. And on social media, we do a lot of infographics. So like really informational posts about different mental health disorders, different parts of both the psychological and the scientific sides of mental health. And we also have a series of comic strips that are really intersectional. It's just all about mental health, sexuality, just kind of accepting yourself and accepting others for who they are and for the struggles that they've been going through, and for accepting yourself for everything that you're going through. Each Mind is really just kind of an all-inclusive, I think, self-explanatory organization almost, because it's really just saying that each mind matters and each mind is represented and cared for. And that's really what we strive to do on social media, is just make everyone feel like they are loved and that, they deserve the mental health care that they need.
And can I just say, I love their comic strips, especially the Pride Month. I know that was a little gay, but I mean, I just wanted to really say that their Pride Month series was really good. But other than that, just their comic strips as a whole are amazing.
Yeah, I checked out your comic strips like on you guys' Instagram as well, and they were so pretty and like so informative. It was like, honestly, I'd never seen an organization do comic strips before, so it was kind of new for me because my teachers give me huge assignments to make comic strips and I never have interest in those, but like seeing you guys, it just like, kind of makes me really happy. And I think your like description was probably just like amazing because, of course, you guys, this organization, I've checked it out. I feel like it's so important for an organization to be like yours, because it's talking about mental health, it's promoting activism, advocacy. It's kind of just bringing everyone together to sort of not stigmatize a particular community or a particular idea, but kind of look at it from a different way, from a different perception, so that you can make the best out of mental health as well, sort of just like that. And I feel like your organization's motto is just impeccable. And so talking more about your organization, and you guys have done a lot of projects, we could see that. So what has been your favorite project that Each Mind has ever conducted? And are there any events that you're looking to, host in the future?
Yeah, I've been on the Each Mind team only for, I would say, almost 2 months now. I'm a little newbie, but my favorite so far has been the first Instagram takeover, because we're trying to do Instagram takeovers so that everyone can get to know our team, because we have a really awesome team of people working on Each Mind. I conducted the first one, which was really fun. I woke up at 6 a.m., started posting at like 7 a.m. It was really great. And then I posted until 9 at night. And I just kind of took you through a day in my life, a lot of things that were going on that day that surrounded each mind, and then my also personal life. So I thought that was really fun because I've always wanted to be a YouTuber, and that was kind of like my dream lived out.
Oh, wow.
On a better platform too, because I have a really short attention span, so I don't know how people can edit long videos for such long amounts of time. It was a bit of the best of both worlds, and the future projects that we are really hoping and really excited if we get to do them would be kinds of interviews for blogs, podcasts with a lot of different representatives and advocates from the mental health community. They sound really, really amazing, and we're just hoping we can make them happen for everyone.
Yeah, I do want to say I really relate to that YouTuber part because, you know, I always wanted to be a YouTuber. I would just like pick up my camera and talk to myself for the rest of the day. So, I mean, we can all relate to the YouTuber part. We've all wanted to become a YouTuber once in our lives.
Right?
Oh gosh, this is such a
school.
Yeah, I said this is such a random side note, but I do YouTube / did YouTube. I'm taking a break right now, but it's so much fun, and I really believe that Sofia and Inja, both of you would be fantastic YouTubers and podcasters. So
Absolutely.
yeah, for sure. But yeah, to answer your question, I absolutely love Sofia's answer because this girl literally went on our Instagram, and then suddenly we have like 10 new followers. Sofia is so good at her job, and I'm really glad that she really enjoyed doing that takeover, and I'm really glad to hear that she's also into YouTube because I need to text her about that later. But with each mind I absolutely loved our LGBTQ plus community issue. Not just because I'm bi and got to be a little represented in there and got to write in there, but also because it was such an amazing thing we did in such a short amount of time. I remember I was in the middle of studying for AP European History and my AP test in general, while organizing everyone to meet and have a tracker, and everything just got done so efficiently while everyone was under so much stress. And of course I don't mean to kind of self-report myself or pressuring everyone, because I didn't need to. Everyone kind of just used each mind as kind of a de-stressing time to write, to draw, and it was so cool. We had around we didn't have a lot of articles. We usually have 12 or 16-ish articles per magazine, but this one was a mini issue, so we only had around 6 or 7, I think, and they were all written by queer writers on our team. And the art was the artists got to talk with the writers and be friends, and that's something that we wanted to work on a lot in our organization, to have people really working together more. So to see all of that happening along with my friend, the art director Ella, was so magical, so stressful, but so magical, mainly magical, and mainly very just so fabulous. And I'm so proud of the team for that. And along with that mini issue came with all of the comics that we were just talking about, because they all are featured on the mini issue, but they're all one by one posted on our social media. So yeah, I absolutely love that project so much, and I am really I'm so glad too that I got to write a very cool article about queer liberation, true queer liberation. And I talked to this BIPOC therapist, and then she talked about so much cool stuff with intersectionality there. But yeah, it was a really great article, and probably one of the top few articles, one of my favorite articles that I've written over the last year. But in terms of the future, there's so much cool stuff coming in the future. Absolutely love what Sofia said in terms of the interviews. Also so excited for this new project that we're currently working on. One of our writers had this really cool idea to interview people within our team about their growth during the pandemic. And Sofia, you and we're getting interviewed for this, right?
I had mine. It was so fun.
Yeah, we're both getting interviewed for this, and we're both getting our art drawn because we have an amazing art team, as you've most likely seen if you've seen it on our social media. So I'm very excited for that to be released sometime mid-August-ish. We don't like to rush people. We like people to, do their jobs with good quality. So yeah, sorry for the long rant. Very passionate about everything we're doing. Very excited for what's to come.
That sounds so
Awesome.
great, and it's you guys have really exciting projects coming up. And again, I do want to kind of, talk more about what you just said relating to, the applied section of your organization. I did do some stalking. I did go on your organization. I did go on your website again and again. I checked it out. It was really amazing. The articles were written so well. They were so I feel like, again, intersectional and so open-minded, and just like not generalizing an idea, but kind of just taking on different perspectives. And this is, I think, so important for an organization to be like yours, because it talks about it's like you just said, that it's really chill, everything's kind of going efficiently without pressurizing people too much. And I feel like it's not just that if we're participating in an organization, if we're taking the leadership role, that we only kind of take it on because we want to fill a college application, we want to put it in there. It's so important to have fun with it, chill, and kind of just take interest in it, not just use it as a mean to kind of make your college a resume or your just application look impressive. And this is really great what you talked about, and we hope that the projects coming up are working on just fine, and really excited to see what you guys have.
For sure. I could definitely say I'm 100% excited. Like, I am literally like your number one fan now. So
love to hear that.
Especially the social media section, the reels that Sofia makes. Chef's kiss, man. I love her reels. They're so like interactive and so fun, and I love that she combines her experiences with mental health as such with others, so that people can get idea about others' situations as well. It's not just about telling people to do stuff. We can share our stories as well, because that will give people an idea of what's it like living with those problems that we're probably going to discuss more as we move forward with the episode. So yeah,
for sure. Like, Sophia's Instagram reels are so cute.
Thank you. Those are my little babies.
And we could see that you worked so hard on them, because those reels just turn out amazing. And yeah, both.
I will literally color code the fonts. That's my dedication level. I will color code each little section of font.
So my children. So dedicated.
I do want to ask, what advice would you give someone looking to take up a leadership role such as yourselves?
Mm-hmm. I'd say be aware of like the space you occupy. I really want, I think it's going back to what Insha said. To be very genuinely honest, if I were to do things for college applications, I would just do one thing, and I'd just be really, really good at one thing. However, I am a selfish person, and I love doing too many things, and I think that's sometimes my downfall, where I branch out into many different directions and end up stressing myself up. Yeah, for sure, right? So it's I think if you are, and I think that's something that didn't cross my mind when I was applying to be the director of writing for Each Mind, that I would occupy a space where I would have to do so many leadership things, and just kind of anticipate more to come, and never think that, oh, I'm just gonna do these two. I never only thought I at first actually I thought I was only gonna be doing a few things with writing and then editing a few pieces and just really small stuff. But I think after I was aware of the space, the huge canvas of things that I could be doing with Each Mind, this whole canvas, just a blank canvas with me to come up with more blog articles, come up with different types of blog articles, start a new project here, connect these two departments together, right? Just being aware of how much space you occupy is so important to, I think, any sort of leadership position, and being aware of why you're occupying that space, which is connected to what I was talking about with college, right? I don't do Each Mind because, and this will sound very cocky, but I don't do Each Mind for college. I know that colleges will see how cool Each Mind is And if they realize how cool it is, they're gonna let me in, and that's cool, I guess. But if they don't, too bad. Like, I'm not doing each mind. I'm not like working on each mind for colleges to see. I'm working on each mind for people out there who enjoy our art, who enjoy our like articles. I'm not gonna be like, pleasing another stupid institution, right? That's just taking away a lot of my money. So yeah, being aware of like why I'm there, why I'm here in each mind, and why I'm occupying this space and how I'm occupying it, very, very important things that I would tell my self like from a year ago, and I would tell any like incoming leader. So yeah, but I think, Sophia, if you have any, like, I know Sophia doesn't have like I know Sophia is a little bit more new to each mind, but Sophia also, I guess, like, there are a lot of those same skills will apply to like things that we both do, which is debate and being a debate captain and stuff like that. But if you want to add anything, go for it.
Yeah, I love how you encompass that. So many people, I feel, they pick up projects or they pick up leadership opportunities just for, the image of it, whether it's to get into college or to have something to put on their resume or to have something to post about or look cool or talk about. I've never understood that mindset, because I'm a person who will get burnt out if I don't like something. I get kind of that attitude from both of my parents. If I don't like doing something, I will end up not doing it. And then you've burned a bridge, or you've made someone upset, or you've even let yourself down. You shouldn't do something just because you think it'll look good somewhere or to someone. You really need to have passion projects with a purpose. It's like, if it's something that you love, then continue doing it. And then that's your purpose. You love doing it, it makes you happy. If you want to do something else or find something else that can add to that, go for it by all means. But don't think about doing something or sign up for something or agree to something just because you think it'll look good to someone else. You don't know what anyone else will think about whatever you're doing. Totally. So the best thing that you can do is enjoy it for yourself. And oh my gosh, I've just had so many conversations with like students and different friends and peers just being like, oh, I'm in this club and I have this many volunteer hours, I'm going to apply to this college and I'm getting in for sure. It's like, I mean, I don't know how college admissions work, but I know that a college admissions counselor is not dumb. They're not going to say, oh wow, this person had 200 hours of sorting books at some random library, but they didn't say anything about what they learned from it or how it benefited them. Like that, you need to have some kind of purpose with what you're doing. It's not all just mindless work. I mean, people can recognize inauthenticity really easily, and it's very, very off-putting. So really, you just need to find your purpose. And again, with what Crystal said, know your purpose, know what space you're occupying and how much space that is, because once you realize all of those different little aspects, it'll just make what you're doing so much more beneficial to you, and you won't care anymore about how it looks to other people.
Yeah. I want to say that I've seen people do so, like, literally random things. So once they're like working in a mental health organization, next they're going in a tech organization, next they're going in an art organization. So it's sort of like literally really random, the organizations they choose, the people they choose to work with, the competitions they enroll themselves in. It's literally random because they're trying to get as many certificates as they can. So by the time they're done with high school, they have literally a stack of certificates that that isn't coherent, that isn't complementing each other, and it's just like random with no purpose. And that's why passion project is called a passion project, because it's your passion, it's your desire, and it's your want. You want to do that and you're passionate about it. That's why you're doing it. You're not just doing it to look cool or present yourself as a person who's so-called woke. So I feel like that's really important, because that you know that you're not just doing it to show it off to others, but you're actually passionate about it. And one more thing I want to elaborate on is the leadership part that you guys talked about. Again, is really important what you said, be aware. And also one thing is take the initiative. So if you're passionate about something, you just don't go around sit and wait for other people to come and approach you so that you can go and collaborate with them, or you can reach out to them on your own. Take the initiative. If you're passionate about something, do it. Just don't wait and just don't beat around the bush waiting for like our organizations, the podcast and your organization. It's all about taking the initiative,
because you're not depending on somebody else to kind of convey your voice. You're doing it on your own. And if you have a voice, use it. You have platforms, you have the resources, and use them wisely, use them if you're passionate about something, just go ahead and do it. Just don't wait and wait for somebody else to help you. That I think is super important.
For sure.
Yeah, going more on the advocacy part, where you're speaking up and taking the charge and just talking about an issue that you're passionate about. I would ask the question that why do you think that teen activism is important? And what kind of significance does it have on the mind of youth? Would you like to
I think activism in any stance is important, especially in today's world. You have so many platforms and resources to not only learn about things, but then to also take a stance on things. So I think just in that sense, because of how easy it is, it's kind of incentivizing to just kind of learn a little bit more about what you can do to advocate for things that you're passionate about. Whatever stance you take on it, you can still do it. But especially for teens, I feel like there's always been this sort of notion that, teens aren't really, they don't formulate ideas. They just regurgitate ideas that they hear in school or on TV or from their parents. But at the same time, then they tell us that you guys are the next generation and the youth is everything. I don't understand, and I've never been very happy with that complete contradiction of ideas.
Right.
Truthfully, I think it's just teens possess a lot of power that they don't necessarily know what to do with. So to kind of curtail that, a lot of adults will just tell them you're not really ready for much, just don't really formulate your stands on too much. They'll change, they'll shift. But definitely keep doing everything that you need to do so you can get a job and be perfect in everything that you do from here on out. I think you need to kind of combine those ideas a little bit and realize that at whatever age you may be, you have power and you have any kind of resource and any platform necessary. Just take hold of that and use it to your benefit, to benefit the causes you care about. It's so easy nowadays to not be apathetic towards so many things. I mean, there are resources literally a click away. So I think teen activism in any sense, but especially when it comes to mental health, is so prevalent. It's just so important. When it comes to activism for young people, it's so, it's literally the foundation of everything that you're going to do afterwards. You need to be able to come up with, what stance am I going to take on X issue? How is that going to either evolve with who I talk to next? How am I going to uphold that with who I talk to next? I mean, we need to learn how to take our own stances on things, to stand alone, and to figure out how to debate them with other people, how to have intellectual conversations with other people, and just really how to be able to take a strong look at ourselves and be able to say, this is what I believe, and this is what I'm going to preach to other people to believe. And it doesn't matter, what stance you take. Just make sure that you can uphold that with whoever you're talking to. And I think teens have just been always kind of discouraged from doing that. But, I mean, in this day and age, I'm all about taking away that stigma and for sure just kind of trampling it. We deserve to have our voices heard, and we deserve to know the space that we occupy, a lot to what Crystal was saying. We deserve to understand that, and we deserve to fully take advantage of that.
Yeah, undermining teens definitely is not it, because the usual comments that we get is it's a phase, it'll go away. The kind of perception that you have right now is not going to be the same in 20 years. So don't just form strong opinions about anything. And I feel like that is so terrible, because we as young people, if we're not allowed to have our own ideas and thoughts and perceptions, then I don't think we're going to grow up to be intellectual adults with a strong mindset. I'm not saying strong form opinions about anything and be biased and just be orthodoxal, but I'm saying have opinions about what you're passionate about and what you think would make an impact on the world, and not just be discouraged by the society saying that you're too young to kind of figure out this kind of stuff. And I feel like that is definitely not the way to go. And what you said about that is basically what you talked about, and I feel like it's really important. You also mentioned the idea of activism related to mental health, and that is sort of my follow-up question I wanted to ask. how does teen mental health activists, how do they play a specific role in the importance of activism that is sort of related to mental health? How would you kind of view it, the mental health aspect of activism?
Yeah, I think mental health has been something that's been stigmatized since the first case of it was found. I mean, most people don't know what to blame it on, and human instinct is to blame anything on everything. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to especially teens when it comes to teens, using their platforms to advocate for it and activating their activism, I guess, cool. It's very important because, again, it's having the courage to really not be afraid to stand up for what you believe in or to form strong ideas about what you believe in, and mental health is just such a delicate topic for so many people that I think they're afraid to break the barrier and just start talking about it openly. Mm-hmm. So when teens are doing it, it just opens it up to so many young people, because when you look at like little kids, they tend to idolize older kids and they tend to idolize the teenagers in the room. So when teens and young people have the courage to speak out about it, I feel like it brings the playing field down to so many other people, and it makes it so much more accessible, and it breaks down so many of the barriers that I feel have been put up after so many, honestly, centuries of stigmatizing it and antagonizing people with mental illnesses. So I see teens as a really, really great gateway to talking about mental health so openly and a bit more freely, I guess.
Yeah, I would like to share an example as well. So basically, when you are speaking, that's literally why activism is important for teens as well, so they can inspire the younger people, younger than us generation, to kind of not form a stigma around mental health or just basically anything. And I kind of have a younger sister, so I could relate to that, because when I take up these opportunities, when I talk openly about mental health in my house, or basically just anything, I remember having a conversation with her. She asked me, why is Harry Styles wearing a dress? And she sort of found it weird that he, wore a dress, because she's of course young and she's had that, she isn't really old enough to kind of process that sort of way. So I had a conversation with her about this and, talked her through everything. And I think that is why activism is important, so that you could kind of educate people as well, people who are younger than you, people who don't have adequate knowledge, to sort of make a change. And now she loves Harry Styles in dress, so I mean, that is progress. So yeah, definitely I agree with activism and mental health is so important.
Yeah, and just adding something really quickly to what Sofia was saying, I think it's so important that we have to understand how much trauma we've been through as a generation. I think sometimes we don't acknowledge that as often. And something else that we need to acknowledge is that we want to, just like with mental health activism, we want to center the experiences of people who've actually been through trauma, right? Lived experiences. So why don't we apply the same thing when we are talking about mental health activism in teens, right? We want to, and activism in teens, we want to consult each other. We want to check in with each other on how we're doing, because we're all going through so much. I emphasize this because we seriously don't understand how we've gone through almost, at least in the United States, almost an insurrection. We've had a global pandemic that's been handled really badly, to the point where none of us have been in schools, where we've been separated from our friends and even some people from their family due to situations. And speaking of family, so many families, especially low income families, are struggling and have been struggling. And because that economic situation and financial situation affects the mental health of teens, there are increased problems with anxiety and depression and so many different things in the past 3 years and in the past 2 years, sorry. And on top of all of that, our world is on fire. Climate change is such an important thing that is on the back of so many young people's minds, and there's just so much chaos and so much going on. There's just so much going on, and that is literally traumatizing to many, and and we don't even know how traumatizing the pandemic is going to be for this generation. And I think it's so important that we talk to each other about these things, and that's why mental health activists are so important. And teen mental health activists are so important, because they're talking about our shared lived experience through this moment right here, where we're experiencing something that no other generations have faced before, and that is like the failures of like our systems around us in the pandemic, and the failures that come with that, and how that failure of the systems around us like affect our mental health.
Yeah,
I totally understand that.
and I quickly want to add a thing. Teens, as you just basically talked about, they're always undermined. They're always thought of as people who are not capable or not, I feel like, intelligent enough to kind of have an opinion and make a change, take the opportunity. So teens often feel undervalued, and being able to have a voice contributes to a community of change, because we're like in a situation where we're again vulnerable, and we're like we think about something but we can't talk about it because again we are undermined by the society, or we're basically facing issues in school, we're facing issues in our daily life, and having a voice and just basically talking about it can definitely make an impact. And diverse opinions come into play during community decision and making and changing basically the society's ideas. And activism kind of gives a lot of diversity and opinions, and and you kind of open yourself to a world where you're not just you don't just know your opinion, but I think you always know both sides of the situation. Sorry if that makes sense. So yeah, basically activism is definitely really important in teens with every idea, mental health, be it feminism, be it basically anything. Having intersectionality is super important in any field of activism.
Love the discussion we have going on here. I think we've definitely touched a really important aspects of teen mental health or teen activism in general. I do want to say quickly, sort of reverting to each mind and what you guys are all about, why is Minority Mental Health Month important to each mind?
Yeah, so I can answer this one. So basically, like I said before, we want to take an inclusive and intersectional approach to talking about teen mental health. And when we are like making this decision, we need to realize how mental health has been approached in the past, especially when it comes to like people of color. People of color have been like dehumanized in the past, and with that dehumanization comes the assumption that we as people of color, and if you're not watching this video live, I am Asian. And that's why I say we, so just clarifying, we as people of color have been dehumanized, and our mental health is also highly dehumanized to the point where, especially like just, throwing out a very common example with like Asian communities, a lot of people think that we are just built like strong to handle all of this academic pressure, when in reality, we're just human. And just like all of us, right? And I think there's a lot of these underlying assumptions that are made due to white supremacy that we need to challenge, not just as one organization, but as a broader mental health movement. I think that's something that really came to mind when I was, discussing intersectionality and how I really want to, push that forward within our organization with the rest of the amazing editorial board. And it's also really cool because our whole editorial board pretty much is made out of people of color, so women of color too. Awesome. Get that diversity in, but also diversity not just in skin color, but also in ideas, right? And those ideas have to be helpful for people of color, and that's why we want to share like those ideas and share those experiences as well. So something that we did for Minority Mental Health Month, which is ending in a few hours. Wait, actually no, I don't know my dates. Minority Mental Health Month, which is ending in a day, is for the month of July. We had a minority mental health survey where we had another amazing person of our social media team, Carla, work on creating a survey and giving out that survey to around, I think there have been over like 50 people who filled it out, which is quite a lot of people considering like Each Mind's audience, and having just a lot of like young teens of color like just fill out the survey talking about all of their different like experiences with how racism has affected their mental health, not just like, you know, direct encounters of racism, but also just like systemic racism, how like systemic racism has affected the way that they've received like healthcare, or how systemic racism has affected their living situations, right? Or like their like environmental racism and all of those other things. So we were able to collect those responses, and as of right now, we are still in the process of publishing them, and they're gonna look super cool. And the whole layout is going to be designed by a Filipino artist from our team. So another amazing woman of color who's designing that survey, and we're just so excited for it to come out and really just like be, you know, vulnerable and honest about these discussions. And yeah.
Cheers to
For
intersectionality. You guys are doing a great job with promoting every single, you know, opinion, people from every single background. It's really great that you guys are doing that, because not a lot of organizations do that, and I think it's really important.
Absolutely. I do want to add to that I did fill out the survey as well. It low-key got me emotional, but it's okay.
Sorry about that.
Oh, I didn't do that. I'll do that. Make sure I do that as well. Because, like, I'm South Asian.
Oh, I think
so,
it closed.
Yeah. I'll definitely be up for it.
Well, I do want to, of course, promote you guys a little bit more. So, basically, if you guys want to look in the description, we do have a link to all of Each Mind's sort of locations where you can find them. If you are interested about the organization, you better be interested after hearing them talk in this episode.
You
because
better.
This is amazing. Like, you better. We do have their link. It's eachmind.card.co. The card is 2 R's. Make sure to add that. But of course, if you just want to click on the link, you can do that. And if you guys want to talk a little bit about your actual social media names, you can go ahead and do that as well.
Please check out Sofia's.
Yeah, do check out
She
her
goes on really,
Instagram.
really fun political rants.
No, I only post my personal account is just me posting about my outfits, but on my stories, me being very angry about politics. But Sofia actually does like charitable, like good work on her Instagram account, so you go ahead and promote that first, Sofia.
It's a lot of story posts. I don't have the energy to take good pictures.
Yeah, I see your stories. It's like polls about mental health and, you know, importance of mental health is so amazing. And I feel like it's so important that when someone asks us how you're doing today, it literally makes my day. And yeah, thank you so much for posting on your stories. It really makes my day. It makes me so happy when you do that. So
that makes my day. Thank you.
Now we're progressing towards the second segment, which basically talks about intersectionality within mental health. So we were basically discussing about it. So we'll go into more detail. And before we start, I would like to basically define intersectionality. I mean, again, it isn't sort of limited to a particular definite definition, but it does kind of give a particular idea of how it works, so that, you know, we know that this is what idea we're kind of having a discussion on. So basically, intersectionality is acknowledging that every individual or group of people have their own experience with forms of discriminations and disadvantages. People are categorized in a way to try to understand such issue and why certain individuals are experiencing them. So basically, this talks about a lot of so some examples can be races, different races, people from different backgrounds, colors, creeds, and their social status, their religion, their sexual orientation, their gender identity, and etc. So this is what intersectionality kind of explores, and I think it's a really important concept, not just in mental health, but as a whole as such, because it just gives a diversity of opinions, a diversity of experiences, and that kind of is really important to recognize. And I do want to say that we have a follow-up episode in the future with Crystal that talks about minority mental health, and again it explores intersectionality, because minority sort of have their own experiences with mental health and their ways to deal with it. So we do have a follow episode, so make sure when it's out to check that out. We'll have a good conversation. I'll tell you that. But so going a bit more into intersectionality, so why is intersectionality actually important to mental health? So do you want to kind of go on about it?
So, like I said before, I truly believe that mental health is connected to so many parts of our lives, right? Like, I remember first giving this presentation about the first presentation I ever gave about mental health for like a non-school thing, like a bigger conference thing. I had like a little image, and it kind of showed how mental health is connected to so many things, connected to our criminal justice system, and how we like sort of dehumanize people who are behind bars, and how that also is like very connected to racism. And it's also connected to our healthcare system, and how, especially in the United States, our healthcare system really fails people who live with a mental illness, right? And how we need to have better and more inclusive healthcare practices that are more humanizing towards people who live with a mental illness, and also people of color who live with a mental illness, and low income people who may not be able to afford like treatment for their mental illness, right? So it's very intertwined in our healthcare system, and that's like everything going on in the world, but it's also so intertwined with like ourselves, how we kind of find ourselves, how we deal with all of the struggles and all of the grief and trauma that life throws at us, and all of the obstacles that life throws at us. I think that connection between how we deal with our own mental health and how the mental health is also so embedded into like politics is something that doesn't really get talked a lot about. It's mainly, and although I'm very glad that it's mainly mental health is mainly talked about in like the personal sense, and I think that's just as equally important. That's what I think, right? I think that's just as equally important as everything else going on in like in politics and in our systems around us. But I truly do believe that to some extent it is very important that we also focus on criticizing and critiquing our systems, so that our systems can better help us, so that our systems aren't locking up thousands of people that have a mental illness each day, or each week or each month, every single year, and practicing like terrible practices that harm people with like a mental illness, and making sure that like our systems aren't directly like prohibiting low income people and people of color from receiving mental health treatment. I think that if we can somehow, and we can direct our activism towards both ways. We are perfectly capable of directing our activism towards helping ourselves and helping our like own local communities, and making sure that we as individuals, like each other, that we're doing okay, while making sure that our systems are taking care of ourselves. So that's how I feel like, that's how I see mental health as being like incredibly intersectional. And I think like something else that's just another thing that I love about how intersectional it is that there's always some place to help out, right? And I think that's obviously a thing with like every single social justice issue, whether if it's like environmental issues, or with healthcare, or with the criminal justice, anything. There's always things to help out, but especially with mental health, there's so many different things that you can just care about and be so passionate about, and see how they've been kind of like misconstrued in the past, and immediately like understand and empathize and be like, I want to help out with this, and I want to do something. And I think that's a unique thing with like mental health, and I really like that.
Yeah, your answer is so touching, and I absolutely agree that mental health is such an important part of everyone's life. Everyone kind of faces challenges with daily lives, or basically just any issues that involves their mental health. Everyone kind of goes through it in some point in their life as well, and their backgrounds, their status kind of affects the way that they look at it. So they might not, give it as much significance, as much importance as it requires, because they think they might not get enough help with what they're going through, or they might be again marginalized. So I feel like that is really important, that we look at mental health not from just like one perspective, but as a whole from different communities and backgrounds. And acknowledging intersectionality allows us to find the roots of the problems that people might go through from different backgrounds as such, and help them or improve the condition that they are in, particular right now. So I feel like that is really important in not just mental health, but again, as such, we talked about before, as a concept on its own, it's really important.
For sure. I do want to add on this by asking another question related to mental health and intersectionality. Does the stigma around mental health affect intersectionality, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's so many examples of this happening, right? Where you can see exactly where in the queer community there was so much stigma around being, especially like in the 90s, I think there was so much stigma around being gay or just being queer in general. And there was also, and continues to be, a lot of stigma around having like a mental illness. And there's so much overlap of how the two sort of like combined into this huge stigma, where there was and still is a huge stereotype of gay and just gay people and also queer people in general being categorized as a mental illness for their identity. I think there's so much overlap in that, and I think it's like fascinating to like realize that and realize that's still happening now. Like, although it's wonderful, I mean, that gay marriage is legalized in the United States, the same attitude of us putting on like the stigma that's surrounding mental health onto like people who are queer is the same, and people who are gay that we did in the past. It's the same process happening now with trans people, right? We, and not just we, sorry, actually not we are inclusive. Other people make it out to be that like trans people are quote unquote like have a mental illness, or being trans is a mental illness, when that's not a thing. That's medically proven not to be a thing. And I think that's like just a huge testament to how, like, especially with queer identity is so intertwined with mental health, and how people view those identities is so intertwined with how we just view people who are different, how we view people who aren't heterosexual, or how we view non-cis people, how we view people who just don't live with a mental illness or anything, or a mental health condition at all. And I think like it's also so connected with like just lack of acceptance in general. So yes, very, very, very connected to stigma around mental health and with intersectionality.
For sure. I definitely agree 100%. I was gonna ask, does this stigma affect one community more than another? But you just said the LGBTQ community does affect is affected more about that with that. But do you want to add on to that?
I don't know. I think like different. I tend to not like to say like one community has like it worse than the other. Not because I don't like believe in that. I think that like can get me in a lot of trouble in a lot of different situations. I think like, but I think it's more important to focus on like in general like our fight against white supremacy, if anything. And I think anything that divides that is just generally unproductive.
Well, mental health is basically viewed upon as, again, the basic stigma, not just like the intersectional communities, but the stigma is that it's not important, shouldn't be treated as if it were important. So I think it's it somehow affects intersectionality as well, because it kind of adds up. First of all, if people are part of the minorities, they again would think that they are not as valued as people who are in majority, and plus the mental health stigma that mental health shouldn't be considered important, it kind of adds up to them already feeling low, but then the stigma about mental health kind of also suppresses them not going out and seeking help. And I feel like that is, it doesn't entirely depend on the stigma and intersectionality, but it kind of adds up to people not even talking about it, just not being themselves or expressing themselves entirely because of the stigma as well as their background.
I totally get that. And I love that, I love both of your points, but I also love that Crystal mentioned that we shouldn't sort of have this sort of competition between who is stigmatized more than the other. I definitely think that can definitely create more of a division between these separate groups, and we are not striving for that here. We love equality and equity and everything like that. I do want to say, especially as a Black person, there is a lot of stigma around mental health within the own community, not necessarily from outside. Well, I can say there is a lot of stigma against Black people who have mental health conditions, but within the community there's a lot of stigma against mental health, which I hate that we have to deal with. But hey, I am Black and I have depression and anxiety, and just by my existence I am fighting this sort of stigma within my community. So I love that. I do want to say within along with intersectionality, there becomes a lot of race-based trauma, which is basically a result of any emotional pain a person has due to racism, which I do want to say affects our mental health, obviously. So having that sort of, like Insha mentioned, actually having that sort of problem as well as the stigma with mental health causes a lot more difficulties. So yeah.
Yeah, kudos to you, girl, because you're like doing amazing with all that stuff. And I like saw somewhere in a documentary, it was about, you know, Black people and their mental health journey. It was about them collaborating on a project. I don't really remember its name, but they basically talked about how in their community, I'm not part of the Black community, so I don't really know much, but from their experiences, they were like, because they are kind of in minority in America, so that kind of becomes a factor of them going out and seeking help. But then there's family load, workload that adds up, plus the mental health stigma that makes them totally suppressed and doesn't let so like basically it's really important to express mental health as a topic on its own. If you're feeling something, feel it, don't just keep it inside, right? So that stigma kind of comes in a way of them actually feeling what they're feeling. So they're kind of confused about how they're feeling because they're keeping it inside. They don't want it to come out because there's a stigma. It will kind of affect their true expression, I guess. But kudos to you, Jordan. You're doing a great job. So, I mean, as we move forward, intersectionality, as we've discussed, is really important. But why exactly is intersectionality so important just in like mental health as such? Why is it so important in the community?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think it should be more talked about because I think intersectionality within the mental health community needs to be more talked about because there's too many distractions. I think there's too many distractions away from intersectionality. There's a lot of, and I think this, because I know your second question or the question after this, I'm just going to, combine them and answer them both at once. I think a lot of like the mental health kind of like activism that we see is very not inclusive, and I think it's very not really what we need, like I think a lot of like what we need more of mental health activism directed towards like the systems around us. And I think that there are a lot of distractions that make us believe that like mental health is only about kind of like individualistic gain for your own mental health. And as much as I like I've said before, I think that that's very important, that we should to many extents like care for our individual selves, and individuality is so important and can be recognized, but individuality can be recognized more and more efficiently when we have systems that are actually protecting us. So I think that so I think there are a lot of like distractions, especially with like a lot of like corporations selling mental health as like kind of a talking point is like really weird to me when they like straight up just don't care about like people of color that are in prison, that are engaged in there's corporations are engaged in using prison labor, or which is very, in prison as an industrial complex is very detrimental to people's mental health. Or they don't care about trans people and how trans people are more likely to die by suicide due to like policies that are supported by these corporations, right? Like they don't care about they don't care about, honestly, they don't care about the mental health of non-cis white people, right? And because they don't care about that, I think, and they like fuel this, and they were like, oh yeah, like love mental health, take care of yourself, with no sort of like back meaning into it besides that blank statement. I think that makes it even more important for us to say, like, reject that notion, reject the notion of like completely, reject like the whole virtue signal that we see from these corporations and that we see in like different, I guess, like advertisements and stuff like that, right? So that's why I think that we should, you know, go the opposite direction and talk about intersectionality and talk about these topics that people and corporations don't want to hear about. So yeah, and the more we talk about intersectionality too, the more that people, and like, you know, what we're doing right now, the more people understand it, and the more people like are educated about it, and they can spread the word to even more people. So yeah, damn, I kind of feel like a villain, like I'm just like spread the knowledge to everyone. But yeah, I really believe in that though. I really believe that there is a fine line between like completely blank, like corporate individualistic expressions for mental health, and very community based and community oriented like fights for mental health justice.
Yeah, mental health surely isn't confined to one particular community and their experiences, because, I mean, again, it doesn't apply to the entire, because there are so many people with different, there's again so much diversity in the world that people have, and their experiences and where they come from, their families, they play a really different role, they play a really important role basically in how they have an experience with mental health. And again, intersectionality is extremely important in mental health, but there's again a lack of recognition of minorities experiencing mental health issues, because first of all, again, they're minorities, they're suppressed, but then what happens is that minorities basically, they are suppressed, and then mental health issues, again, as I previously mentioned, it adds up to them getting more suppressed with the mental health issues they have. And I do want to add a quick statistic. So 13% of the American population is African American, and 16% of them were diagnosed with a mental illness. And to do the quick, like, big numbers, that would be about 7 million African American people that suffering with a diagnosable mental health issue. And this is actually a really big number because again, 7 million is a lot, and their mental health is as important as any other communities, and they would entirely have a different experience with mental health because they come from a different sort of background, and their families as such kind of, I mean, every family has a different perspective about mental health, and that again, I think why intersectionality is so important, because people have different experiences, people have different thoughts about mental health as such. And so is the Asian community, and I feel like as Asian community, me being part of that, I'm South Asian, we as such, I feel like in my country, I feel mental health is so stigmatized, and people kind of view it as, again, not important, and we have different experiences with mental health as well. But people, 82% of AAIP report suicidal thoughts, and 40% of them have done suicidal attempts, and about 39% of them have had sensory processing disorders. So this is really important, but really concerning as well, because the idea about mental health is just sort of, so intersectional. It's really important, and I feel like that is why intersectionality is important. So yeah, that's kind of it.
And that being said, we do want to recognize that minorities do experience mental health issues just like everyone else, and unfortunately corporations and society in general do not recognize that. I know that even like in nurse textbooks, I believe that they think that people of color don't experience mental health issues and like focus mainly on white people, but anyway, that's another problem for another day. If you do want to hear us talk about more about intersectionality, please tune into our future episode about minority mental health. which I'm super excited to discuss about because I've been dying to rant about this. We were going to talk a little bit about the sacrifices of prioritizing mental health, which Sofia was going to talk a lot more about, but I do want to say we are running out of time, so we might just have another separate episode with her too. Who knows? We'll make it work. So with that being said, again, thank you guys for coming, and we do have a few closing remarks. Our website is bloompod.wixsite.com/podcast if you want to learn more about us and our extra section, can never say that right. You can find the research and transcript for this episode as well as a podcast guest form if you want to be on the episode. And you can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, all at Forever Bloom Pod, plus TikTok at Forever Blooming Podcast. And our new email address is management@foreverbloompod.org. And be sure to check out our link tree and each mine's description or card thingy. Yep. With all of their links, and make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and share with your friends if you enjoyed this episode. And have a great day, afternoon, or night whenever you're listening to this. Thanks for tuning in.